Dr. Benayed, thank you very, very much for taking the time to talk with us today. We're very excited to have you here in Washington.
It's my pleasure.
So, first of all, I'd like to ask you a general question about the Tunisian economy. The Tunisian economy is in dire straits right now. What are some things that the government can do to boost it fairly quickly?
The solution for the Tunisian economy as it stands now is largely political. So it is very important today to finish the constitution and to shorten the second transition period and to hold elections as soon as possible, before year-end if possible, because this will give visibility and predictability for the next period, which is necessary in order to resume normal economic activity. And also a legitimately elected government for a full term will have a full mandate to carry necessary reforms, which are necessary for the next stage in order to restart the economy on sound basis.
What about the situation with unemployment? Perhaps the most immediate problem facing the Tunisian economy is just there aren't enough jobs to go around. Are there some things that a government, once it has the political mandate, can do to create jobs fairly quickly?
After the revolution, there were 800,000 unemployed in Tunis. 200,000 have college degrees among those 800,000. And that's clearly it was one of the leading economic factors for the revolution. The current governments during the transition period tried to create jobs through offering government job opportunities. The unemployment rate dropped from 18.4% to 16.7% now. But that was due mainly to jobs in government and in government-related activities, which were around 100,000 jobs. And the government cannot continue to do that for a long time, and it's not efficient for the economy. Real job creation in Tunisia comes from economic growth. Each point in economic growth is 15,000 new jobs. And if we look at the numbers, Tunisia needs to grow between 7 and 8% per year in order to be able to absorb all job seekers and new job seekers that will come on the market, which in my sense is achievable if we can achieve political stability and do the necessary reforms.
So where would the Tunisian economy, how would it achieve growth rates like that?
Before the revolution, the Tunisian economy grew at 5% on the average for the past few years, which means that if everything stays as it is, we just reestablish stability, we should be able to get 5% back again. Now, we need to increase that by at least 2 points in order to achieve prosperity and reduce significantly unemployment. And that can be done because Tunisia has a good industrial activity. It has a free trade agreement with Europe and was successful in attracting foreign direct investment from Europe mainly. It has developed new high-value added activities such as IT, aerospace, electromechanical industry for the automotive industry in Europe. So there are many niches where Tunisia can really develop high-value added and achieve growth. The food industry is also a blossoming industry, and it caters not only to Tunisia but also to the Algerian and Libyan market.
Very interesting. So in order to promote business growth, economic growth in general, do you think that deregulation is important? Is the Tunisian bureaucracy a problem, or is that not one of the priorities?
No, you're right. It's absolutely a necessity. the Tunisian government needs to focus on establishing a better business environment because, as I previously said, the only way to achieve growth in Tunisia is through investment, both foreign and local direct investment. And in order for the investment to prosper, a few things needs to be done. Tunisia needs to reform its investment code. The old investment code is very constraining in terms of activities that can be done, the number of authorizations that needs to be done, and usually investors needed to go through corruption in order to move through the red tape. Obviously, all of that needs to be loosened up, needs to be waived and deregulated. And there is a new investment code that has been prepared that just does that. There is another reform which is very important, which is the fiscal reform. And Tunisia is now heading towards a new fiscal system where the fiscal pressure is reduced and fiscality and taxation is reduced, but the base is much larger, and there would be no fringes of the population which are protected from paying their taxes. So the reform of the judiciary is very important for the business and for the business community. That's a political reform, but with direct incidence on investment. Institutions that fight corruption and install transparency and good governance are also very important. Reform of the educational system, which have started, so that the educational system graduates people with skills that are needed by the job market. So all of these reforms are necessary. Some of them are underway. Some of them did not start yet, and probably will start after the end of the transition period.
Now, the development economist Hernando de Soto has pointed out that the Tunisian revolution began because of an incident involving someone whose property was under threat from the state, Mohamed Bouazizi. Do you think that part of the problem in Tunisia is a lack of clarity about property rights? Or is that not a priority problem?
It's not a major problem. It's not a major problem. The problem was not in the law or the protection of property as much as it was in the practice of the law. So we need to improve the practice of the law, and we need to protect citizens and companies in a better way, especially by making the judiciary more independent. A lot of people say that there are problems related to probably laws. That's why unemployment was very important. For me, the unemployment was mainly due to the lack of growth. We were growing at 5%. We should have been growing at 7 to 8%. That was achievable if there was no corruption, in my sense.
Now, one problem that a lot of the economies in the Middle East and North Africa region share is subsidies. A lot of the governments there have subsidized various parts of the economy quite heavily and created immense structural distortions. And as I understand it, this is a problem that also faces Tunisia, though perhaps not on the scale of some other countries like perhaps Egypt. What do you think is the most sensible way to deal with the subsidy issue?
Subsidies is probably the number one problem currently for the state's budget. Because if we look at the numbers, in 2010, the subsidy line in the state's budget was 1.7 billion dinar. Today, it's 4.4 billion dinars. And this increase is due to three main factors. The first factor is the increase in the price of commodities worldwide, especially for energy. The second problem is the devaluation of the dinar with respect to the dollar and the euro, which makes the price of that same commodity more expensive domestically. And the third factor is the increase in consumption, because in Tunisia, we have hosted on a permanent basis close to 1 million Libyan after the Libyan revolution. Now, these million Libyans consume subsidized products, food products, but also they consume fuel, for example. We have an additional 150,000 cars in circulation all of a sudden because of this increase. All of this resulted in this huge increase in the subsidy system. Now, to face that, the government has already done few actions. It increased fuel prices at the pump twice, even during the transition period, which no country did. It needed a lot of courage. So both increases involved 3.5% each increase. It also increased the electricity price by 3% for domestic consumption and 6% for business consumption. So there is a move in order to do price adjustments and make the prices closer to world market. There are also studies that have started now by the government in order to substitute the general subsidy system by a more focused and adapted system where the subsidies are just directed to people who need them.
A very tricky political issue. A lot of the top businessmen in the country, the number that's been named to me is from 300 to 400, have been imprisoned because of their ties to the old Ben Ali regime. One can understand perfectly well why Tunisians suspect some of these people of corruption, but clearly that can also cause problems of its own when the people who are accustomed to playing a key role in the economy suddenly aren't there anymore. Is there an easy way out of this tricky political dilemma, or do you just have to let it sort itself out?
Well, let me first of all bring a small correction. They are not in prison. They have court cases that are underway.
Yes.
Okay, which is an added pressure on these people and does not bring confidence and serenity which is necessary in order for them to play their role and carry the necessary investments which they should be playing. There are 800 court cases today involving corruption where there are businessmen involved. Now, there is a big effort now, and there is a conscious, all political parties are conscious that this issue should be dealt with and quickly. Because as you said, the business community is very important in order to boost investment and develop employment. And there is a willingness to turn the page very quickly. So there are propositions now underway in order to introduce laws that do adjustments on the penal code, where jail terms are substituted by small financial penalties, and that way the state gets its due if there is prejudice, and the business person or the entrepreneur has the ability to continue contributing to society.
That's very interesting because this kind of problem exists in a lot of other countries as well, and perhaps Tunisia can serve as something of a model here.
Yes, indeed. It is a very important problem to solve, and to solve very quickly, because the image of the business person has been destroyed after the revolution. Essentially, the image of the businessman is that they are corrupt capitalists who were associated with the old regime. And that image is not conducive for the development of entrepreneurships. The businessmen no longer serve as a role model for young graduates who are entrepreneurs to be, if you develop that kind of image. So it is very important to restore the image of the businessman as a patriotic element that contributes positively in the country, in the building of the economy. And I think that this problem will be solved quickly.
Another big structural problem that affects Tunisia is the divide between the coastal region and the inland region, the latter of which is somewhat underprivileged because of policies that the previous government pursued. Are there any easy ways to overcome this regional imbalance in the economy?
Indeed, it's an important problem. And this disparities between the coastal region and the interior regions are huge, especially in terms of infrastructure, which means that there are less employment opportunities in the interior regions because investors don't go, they don't create hotels, they don't create factories because they don't have electricity, they don't have industrial zones. It's difficult to move goods between major towns and in the interior of the country. And there are no easy way, in my sense, to correct this except by investing in infrastructure and correcting what has been done previously during the past 50 years. And in the past 2 years, the government allocated more budget for infrastructure in the interior than budgets for people, for towns on the coastal line in order to fix that disparity. Hopefully in few years, if we continue investing properly in infrastructure and we focus on developing those regions, then the investors will come after the infrastructure is there in order to develop those regions because they have a lot to offer. They are not poor regions. They are poor in terms of infrastructure. But there are so many opportunities on those regions that are yet to be explored.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the conversation today.